Alright, this is part one of the video. First thing, you guys will be selected to go to different tables, and I will tell you which tables you will go to and who will sit at what tables. Each table will have a tote tray with a lot of different ceramic tools in it. It'll kind of look like this. And then each table will also have some cloth boards, which will look like this. We usually do most of our work on the cloth boards, and then when you're done for the day, we'll put them on a tray or another board, and I'll explain you that in class. First thing I want to explain to you is what are called the 5 stages of clay. The first one's called greenware. That means that it is pliable and you can bend it, you can manipulate it however you want. So it's basically kind of wet, moist clay. So like this clay, we can bend it, we can manipulate it. Some of it is a little bit more wet than the others. The second type is called leather hard. Okay, this is a semi-dry piece of clay. So it's sat out a little bit, dried out a little bit, hence it's semi-dry, leather hard. You can't really bend it. Maybe could if you tried really hard, but it may break. But it stiffens up so that you can do a little bit more work on it. You can still work with leather hard clay. The next stage is called bone dry. That means it's completely dried out. Once it is bone dry, you cannot add any more clay to it. So the last stage that you can add clay to would be the leather hard stage or the greenware, but bone dry you cannot add to it. It's too dried out. The other thing about bone dry clay is it becomes extremely fragile, so it doesn't take much for a piece to break, so you got to be very careful at that stage. The next stage after that is called bisqueware. Bisqueware means that it has been fired once. Once you are done making your piece and it dries completely out to the bone dry stage, I put it in a kiln, which is just a giant oven, and we fire things. I heat up the oven and it gets to about 1800 degrees, and then it hardens the clay. It then becomes what is called bisqueware. It's a lot harder. Okay. Now if you take my 3D studio class, after we do bisqueware, we allow you to glaze it. In this class you won't have enough time to do that, but you will be able to paint your projects after you're done. So the next stage would be glazeware, but you guys won't do that. So the last stage is bisqueware. So you got greenware, bend, leather hard, can't bend but you can still work with, bone dry, completely dried out, very fragile, and then bisqueware means it's been fired once. For this next part, what I'm going to do is show you some different what are called surface decoration techniques, different things that you can do with the clay. Most of these you're going to do, like I said, either on the greenware or you're going to do on the leather hard. So I'll show you which techniques work best for what. First of all, again, you want to be working on that cloth board. You may have to share these. I don't know that I have enough for everybody in the class, but whenever you're rolling anything out in your tote trays, you're going to have some rolling pins. You'll also have a squirt bottle. You can just mist down the cloth boards. You don't want it completely dry. If it is, then it's going to dry out your clay, but you also don't want to drench your board because then it's going to stick to it. So we're going to roll this out a little bit so we can do some different things on it, and then I'll show you what those techniques look like. The first technique is called incising. Incising basically means you're going to draw lines into the clay. So I would take this piece, this is a greenware piece, you can draw different lines in there. Maybe you want to make it look like some eyes. What you guys are going to be making are some different creatures. Maybe you want to draw some fur in there, make some lines. It just depends on what you want to do. So incising is basically drawing lines into the clay. The next one's called impressing. There's a lot of different things. You can use different tools. And you don't have to use this tool for the incising. You can use a pencil, use whatever you want to draw the lines with. Same thing with impressing. You can use any tool. This one has like a little hook on the end of it. It's kind of neat. If you press that over and over and over again, it kind of looks like scales. Right? You could take the side of this and do it differently and it still kind of looks like scales. We can take a tool like this and do the side of it. We can do it different ways and it still comes up with some different techniques. You could take the end of a pin and it would be circles, just depending on how you overlapped it. Or there's a lot of different, I have some different stamps back that I will get out for you guys. Here's one that's a skull where you just press it in and then it comes out. There are a lot of multiples, so if you wanted a certain texture, we did this one over and over and over again, it would give that bumpy texture. There are also what are called texture rolls. So they look like this, or they look like this. And basically what you do, I'll do this one on the leather heart, is you just roll it over the top of it. Or we can roll this one over the top, and then it will impress that texture on there. So that's called impressing. The next one is carving. It's basically what it's called, carving, where you carve out, totally take out a piece of clay. The thing when you carve is you need to be careful that you don't leave really small, thin areas. So I'm just gonna took the knife and I'm gonna pop that out. All right. You don't want anything too thin here because this will break eventually. So I wanted to leave enough room. If I made that really, really tiny or thin, cut that out. Also, this works best, carving works best on the leather hard stage rather than the greenware. All right, so that's even thinner. So when this becomes bone dry, it's just going to become really, really fragile and may break really, really easy. So make sure that you leave yourself plenty of room when you're cutting something out. Then the next one is called applique. Applique basically means that you are going to add a rolled out piece of clay onto another one. So we're going to take the roller. Again, there's two different types of rollers. These are called pony rollers. You roll it out. We don't want it real thick. We're going to cut out something. So let's say I wanted to cut out a wing to add to my creature. So here's the wing, but I wanted to add it if this was my actual creature, even though it looks like Pac-Man. And I wanted to add this on top of there. That would be applique. Now to add, this is very important, to add two pieces together, anytime you add two pieces of clay together, you want to do what's called the score and slip method. So you want to take something like the knife. You're going to see little serrated pieces of this. There is also like a little rake tool, and you want to scratch, which is scoring, and then you'll score the piece, the back of the piece that you're going to put on. Okay, so that's scored, and then you should have a container that's of slip. Slip is like watered down glue, so we're going to add some of this slip on here. You can add it on both, or you can just add it on one side. You want it kind of thick. So if I wanted to add this piece onto here, the slip is in between it. You can see it's kind of squishing out. Then you can take this tool and kind of clean up your edges. You do want to clean this up so it doesn't look like it's bulging out. Okay, and then that's just adding on a layered piece like that. So that's called the applique method. Okay, the next technique I'm going to show you is how to use what's called the extruder. You're going to have this little contraption like this. It may be dried out a little bit and you may not be able to get this handle out. If you can't get it out, take it over to the water, the sink, and run some water through it. It means there's dried out clay in there. So at the end period, you want to make sure that you clean this out, or it's going to be a pain like it is right now to clean out. So it has this little thing in there, and then it has, you should have a little container that has a bunch of different dies in it. It'll look like this. You should have circles. You have some that have a lot of small circles. These are a little bit harder to use. You want the bigger pieces. So we're going to use this little clover piece. And then you have a top. Put that on there and then screw this on. And then you want to make sure that you take greenware clay, the clay that's kind of wet. You don't want it to be dried out. Screw that on. And then you just need a small piece, not very big. Put that down in there. Okay, so when you push this through, it'll come out in a thin piece and cut it off. Again, make sure when you're done that you unscrew this and clean out any excess clay that's in there, because if this dries out in there, then it makes it hard to use for the next day. So we got this kind of piece like this. If we wanted to use it for a border or use it for some kind of extra, if we're adding it on to another piece of clay, we still have to do that score and slip method. This may be hard to score, so at least score the surface that you're adding it on. So if I wanted to put it as a border around here, scoring, adding the slip, which is like the glue. The score makes the slip stick in there a little bit better. So since we're not scoring this, I want to put plenty of slip on there. And then I'm just going to push this down into the slip. So you can see that piece is added on in there. And then you want to go back through, like I said, kind of clean up those edges. There's another tool in there, the rubber tip tool. It works really well for kind of cleaning up the slip edges around the edges. Okay, so we're just adding on a raised up piece. You can use a lot of these different dies. If you use something like this that comes out in a lot of really stringy areas, you want to make sure that you score and slip your surface really, really well. If a piece is too thick, the rule of thumb is you don't want it bigger than your thumb. But let's say you want like a ball, like we're going to start out with, and we're going to make a circle for a body of a creature. But we just can't use one solid piece of clay, because if it's too thick, it will explode in the kiln because it doesn't dry out all the way through. So if I had a ball like this big, this would be too thick. But if I wanted to put this somewhere on my piece, you can still use it by cutting it in half and hollowing it out. Each table should have, tote tray should have a wire in it. Wire's used to cut the clay off, so if you have a big bag of clay, and then if I have this piece, you may have to have somebody hold on to it. I could cut this in half. Okay, so we have one half and the other half, and then you could hollow that out. There's a couple different tools that work really well for that. Something like this would work. So we're going to hollow just this inside part out. Something like that. I'm going to do this really quick. You'd want to take a little bit more time. We carve both sides out, and then we're going to put this two pieces back together. Now remember, when you put two pieces back together, you still have to score and slip. So we'd score, slip these two, put them back together, and pull it back together. Now, once it's together, it's hollow. But if it's hollow, it needs to have an air hole for the air to escape. If not, again, air is going to stay in there, it's going to boil up, steam's going to create in there, and then it's going to explode in the kiln. So after you get something that's hollow, then you want to put a hole in there somewhere so the air can escape. So you got to think about that when you're designing your creature. Once you are finished with your clay at the end of the day, you need to try to stack it all up tightly together into one ball. You don't want it in separate pieces. And then you're going to take your large sack of clay and put that large, or the ball you just made, into the large sack. Okay, and then after you put it all in this one large sack, you need to try to put it and kind of beat it to where it's all in one piece. If it's not one piece, it tends to dry out. You want your clay to stay wet and at that greenware stage. Also, make sure that it is closed tight and it has no holes in it and that there's no opening. After you put your clay away, you want to put all your tools away. So make sure all the tools are put back into the tray. Okay, not the stamps. We're going to put the stamps somewhere else. Make sure your slip is covered, shut, and in the tray. Then take your stamps, and we are going to take them over to where the extruder is. That's that large machine on the table. There should be two boxes over there. One says textured rolls and one says stamps. And then make sure that you put the correct thing in the correct box. Once you have put your tools away, then you need to brush off your table. There are brushes over by the trash cans and a dustpan. Brush them into that trash pan and then throw this away. Do not reclaim this clay, throw it all away. Okay, so brush off your table is really good so there's no dry pieces. Then you're going to go over to the sink, grab a sponge, wet it down, and then you're going to wipe off the table. Okay, you want to make sure you clean it all up very well before you wipe it down. We want to wipe it down because this decreases the dust in the room. If not, it gets really, really dusty in the room. So after you're done, wipe the tables down with a wet, damp sponge. Once you're done cleaning up, put your boards in your tote tray and your clay, all stacked one on top of the other in the middle of your table. Once you're done cleaning up, check the floor to make sure there's no small pieces of clay on the floor. Pick them up. If it is semi-dry, you can put it in the semi-dry or leather hard clay reclaim bucket, which is over by the extruder table. Wash your hands of either that bucket, sink, or any of the other for sinks, but you want to make sure there is a bucket in the sink. This will collect any clay that's left over on your hands, and the water will run over. So you want to wash out that bucket. If you have clay in your fingernails, there's a fingernail brush in there you can use, and then just rinse it out in that bucket again. When you're ready to put away your pieces, you want to put them on a tray. Don't leave them on that cloth board. So we're going to put them on the tray. Try to fit as many in your group members on one tray as possible, but you want to be careful that you don't knock and hit anybody else's piece and knock pieces off. Then you're going to put a piece of plastic bag over the top of it. Again, be careful that you don't knock any pieces off there on top, and then you want to make sure that that is shut completely. Okay, if you're continuing to work on it, you don't want it to dry out. So to make sure that it doesn't dry out, we want to make sure that that bag is shut. Also, make sure that you have a piece of masking tape on it with all your table members or whoever's pieces are in that bag, and put that on the bag so you know which one is yours. Then last but not least, you're going to pick up that tray and put it in two places. So either that rack over there by the door, or in this cabinet. Okay, I will help you and tell you which table will go where, and we'll make sure that we are not hitting anybody else's pieces. You just want to make sure that when you put it into these shelves or into that rack, you do not leave it open like this. Okay, if you leave it open, it's going to dry out. So make sure that your pieces are covered. That's very important.